How did he get from this to this?
What's that free? Oh my, it's free! Oh my god! Oh my god, it's free! It's gone in, blood! Oh my days, bruv! Bruv, let me tell you this. Nah, this is the worst day ever, bruv. This is the worst day. 3-0 down in 8 minutes. Can't breathe. I can't breathe. I need it.
To truly understand how it got to this stage, we first have to travel back to June 1st, 2019, where after having a transfer window of 0 transfers, they somehow managed to make a crazy run to reach the Champions League finals, where their miraculous run would ultimately end. While this run was special, it had a crippling effect the next season. Not being able to rotate the squad due to a lack of squad depth caused the players to look drained the next season, and while Daniel Levy finally opened the checkbook and spent £150 million to bring highly sought after youngsters like Ndombele, Sessegnon, and Lo Celso, none of them proved much help because of their lack of experience. The next season, Pochettino and Spurs would have their worst start to a season, with Spurs falling to 10th place in the Premier League, losing to teams like pre-takeover Newcastle and Brighton. A draw at home to Sheffield United would be the final nail in the coffin, as Pochettino would take the blame for their failures and would ultimately get fired. Fans were angry at the firing, as they believed Pochettino took the fall for Daniel Levy's mistake of not spending a single pound on the player the summer before. However, the fans would soon forget about their frustrations as Tottenham would hire the special one, Jose Mourinho. Fans and the media alike believed Jose's serial winner mentality would rub off on the squad and turn their fortunes around. There was a sense of excitement around the club as they finally moved into their new world-class stadium and brought in a world-class manager to go along with it. Jose would be the one to finally deliver them to the promised land and win them their first trophy since winning the Carabao Cup in 2008. Jose's first task in the job would be to get rid of the players he didn't want, and that he did. Players he deemed as unnecessary for the squad like Christian Eriksen and Danny Rose would be sold off in January, and young talents like Jack Clark and Kyle Walker-Peters would be loaned out. Tottenham would also bring in a pacey young winger in Steven Bergwijn for £30 million to help reinforce their attack. Bergwijn will make a quick impact at Tottenham as he scored in his debut against Man City and impressed everyone with his quickness and in particular his counter-attacking ability. Jose would ultimately have a successful first season as he changed Tottenham's fortunes around and earned them Europa League football. Heading into the summer, Tottenham would have one massive need, and that was centre back. Jan Vertonghen had left to Benfica on a free transfer, which left Tottenham with an old Alderweireld and Eric Dyer in the starting lineup. Unfortunately for Tottenham, the reinforcement would not come as they were stuck with Eric Dyer and Alderweireld in the starting lineup to start the season. To everyone's surprise, Eric Dyer and Alderweireld actually played well to start the season, and Tottenham would be flying sky high, sitting on top of the table by match week 12 behind the deadly duo of Kane and Son's partnership. That didn't last long though, as Tottenham's park the bus counter-attacking style finally started leaking goals, which caused them to drop to 5th as the January transfer window opened. Did that cause Daniel Levy to finally invest in a starting caliber center?
Nope.
Instead, all Tottenham got was a centre back from Swansea who's never played a minute of football in a league higher than the Championship. This caused a massive strain on the relationship between Levy and Mourinho, which just created a massive toxic atmosphere around the club. As results kept slipping, more and more fans wanted Mourinho sacked as the football was boring to watch and the results just weren't there anymore. They would struggle to break down smaller teams and even failed at the very focus of their system, to defend. They would get knocked out of the FA Cup early by Everton and knocked out of the Europa League by Dinamo Zagreb, whose manager was in jail at the time. Yes, you heard that right, they lost to a team from Serbia whose manager was in jail for fraud. It couldn't get more Spursy than that, really, and Tottenham became a laughingstock of the Premier League. I mean, even Larry Nance, of all people, a completely random NBA player who I didn't even know knew what football was knocking Tottenham while they were down. The Mourinho era at Tottenham would come to an end on April 19 after a dreadful draw with Everton. But there was one problem. Tottenham were still in the Carabao Cup and were actually playing in the finals in a week against Man City. Tottenham would actually have a chance to win a trophy for the first time since 2008 with the greatest knockout round specialist in Jose Mourinho to lead them, but instead Daniel Levy decided to fire him just before the finals. Instead, they were now led by a 29-year-old manager in Ryan Mason against the greatest tactical mind in football, Pep Guardiola, and as you would expect, Tottenham ended up losing the match. However, now that the manager search was on, Daniel Levy promised to bring back the Tottenham DNA, where free-flowing attacking football would be played under the next manager. The search started with Nagelsmann at first, but later pivots to Hansi Flick after Nagelsmann took the Bayern job. But Flick rejected Tottenham's offer and instead decided to become a manager of the German national team. They then attempted to target Erik ten Hag of Ajax, but decided against offering him a contract because he wasn't charismatic enough for the Tottenham board. At this point, Daniel Levy decided he needed someone else to take charge of the footballing side of Tottenham and hired Fabio Paratici to become the footballing director of the club. Paratici came from Juventus, where he oversaw Juventus' dominant run in the Serie A in the 2010s. With Paratici on board, Tottenham attempted to recruit his former manager Antonio Conte, who just came off a season where he dethroned Juventus in Serie A with Inter Milan. However, Antonio Conte backed out of the deal as he believed Tottenham would not be able to offer him the budget he would require to compete with the top teams in the Premier League. Left with little options, Paratici started negotiating with Roma's Paulo Fonseca, but ultimately ended up backing out because of his doubts over Fonseca's defensive structure. Left with even less options, Paratici reached out to Gattuso for the managerial role. But this deal would fall apart as Tottenham fans took to social media to oppose the deal with #NoToGattuso trending on Twitter, which caused Daniel Levy to get cold feet and called the deal off. By the end of June, the manager shortlist came down to two candidates: Graham Potter and Nuno Espirito Santos. Many fans wanted Graham Potter, as he embodied Tottenham's DNA of attacking football, but Paratici convinced Levy that Nuno was the right man for the job. And just like that, finally, after 72 days, Tottenham got a new manager. Fans were mad because Levy went back on his word of bringing back the Tottenham DNA by hiring a pragmatic manager in Nuno. The Tottenham job proved to be too much for Nuno Espirito Santo, as he got sacked just after 17 games into his tenure after a humiliating loss to Manchester United in what was deemed as the Antonio Conte Derby. After the sacking of Nuno, Antonio Conte was hired and the fans were rejuvenated yet again. Although there was a striking similarity to the hiring of Jose, fans believed this time it would be different and that Jose was a dinosaur with washed up tactics by the time Tottenham hired him, but Conte was a proven winner who has shown his tactics still work in the modern age. Paratici aimed to help Conte in the winter transfer window by bringing in players he was familiar with from Juventus in Bentancur and Kulusevski. While those players were unwanted by Juve, they thrived in Conte's system immediately after arriving, and they weren't the only ones who improved, as Ben Davies and Eric Dyer genuinely looked class in the 5 at the back system, and Son Heung-min had his best season to date, scoring 23 goals in the Prem, which was good enough to win the Golden Boot that season. With the new and improved system, everything was clicking, with Tottenham winning 4 out of their last 5 games, including a crucial 3-0 victory over Arsenal to secure Champions League. Spirits were high in Tottenham, and to make things better, ENIC and Levy agreed to inject £150 million into the club to help Tottenham spend big in the summer. Heading into the summer window, the needs were similar to the previous summer's centre back. And the centre back that Conte was drooling over was Alessandro Bastoni, a young proven centre back who had a chance to play under Conte in Inter Milan. The problem, however, was Bastoni loved Inter and didn't want to leave Italy to join Spurs. Nonetheless, Tottenham spent the whole summer trying to convince him to join until late into the summer transfer window when they settled for a Clement Longley loan deal. Just like the previous seasons, Tottenham panic bought a centre back, which left a gaping hole in the defense. Even with that though, the expectations were high, as fans believed the squad having a preseason to train under Conte would pay dividends and would lead to even more improved results in the next season. To start the season, Tottenham would scrape by the results by relying on second half comebacks and improved set pieces thanks to the set piece coach Giovanni Vio. Their 5 at the back system wasn't as effective as last season and struggled to break down smaller sides who would park the bus. Many of the players who looked class last season also took a massive dip in form, with players like Son, Kulusevski and Dyer looking a lot worse this season. Fans were also starting to get frustrated with Conte's refusal to play younger players, in particular Jet Spence, the young exciting right back that was brought in over the summer. People were starting to get tired of watching Emerson and Doherty start week in and week out and wanted to see what Spence can offer, but Conte stood by his guns and refused to play Spence for any significant amount of time. All these issues were multiplied after the team came back from the World Cup, with the team struggling to make second half comebacks that saved them earlier in the season. Conte would also deal with personal issues as he lost his right-hand man Gian Viro Piron and also struggled with gallbladder issues that caused him to have surgery and miss a decent portion of games. It only got worse as he came back from surgery with his unhealthy state of mind and team slipping form. It all came crashing down after Spurs blew a 3-1 lead with 15 minutes to go to a relegation fodder Southampton. Conte exploded at the press conference after the game, calling the team selfish and refusing to take the blame for the team's poor performance. After the press conference, Levy had no choice but to sack Conte to try to salvage the season. Ryan Mason would return as the interim manager yet again, and to make matters worse, Tottenham's football director Fabio Paratici was handed a 30-month ban by the FA for financial fraud in his previous stint at Juventus. Paratici resigned after his appeal to get the ban overturned failed, and Tottenham brought in Scott Munn, who previously served as the chief financial football executive in City Football Group in Australia with decent success. Tottenham then directed their focus towards finding a new manager in place. Their first target was former Chelsea manager Thomas Tuchel, who expressed interest in joining Tottenham but ultimately decided to replace Nagelsmann at Bayern. Tottenham then saw an opportunity to poach Nagelsmann, who they had interest in previous summers, but Nagelsmann ended up backing out of the negotiations because of the uncertainty of football structure at Tottenham. Arne Slot, who had massive success at Feyenoord in the Eredivisie, was next up on the list of Tottenham's managerial list. The pursuit lasted a couple weeks, but Slot ended up staying put by signing an extension with Feyenoord. That leads us to today, where Ange Postecoglou of Celtics is seen as the leading candidate for the Tottenham job. Whatever Tottenham ends up deciding to do with the manager position, they can't afford to drag out the managerial pursuit for a long time like they did during the Nuno debacle. They also have to get the right profile of manager because they can't afford to chase after serial winners who play defensive football, because it's been made clear from the last 3 appointments that defensive football and Tottenham just don't mash well together. It always starts off impressive but ends up crashing down into dull football that's not entertaining to watch and doesn't win games. If Tottenham don't get their next manager appointment correct, that might leave them behind the competition for a long time. With Real Madrid and Manchester United sniffing around Harry Kane this summer, there's a good chance he leaves. If he leaves, that's 40% of the goal contributions that would be gone just in a matter of one transfer, and that would be very tough to replace even with the money from the Harry Kane transfer. If they don't get their next manager right, it will be very tough to break into the top 4 in the foreseeable future.